Not Just Numbers, A Humanizing Approach to Poverty by Alice Chambers and Maggie. What is poverty? Many Americans associate the term with starvation, homelessness, and material deprivation. While these notions may have some truth, poverty is a multifaceted issue that needs to be examined in depth. We define poverty as a state of lacking the capabilities to lead a dignified life. We propose measuring poverty using elements of both the official poverty measure, OPM, and the supplemental poverty measure, SPM. In a broad sense, the OPM determines income thresholds at which people qualify for in-kind benefits, such as welfare, while the SPM calculates in-kind benefits, as determined by the OPM, along with income, geography, family composition, and non-discretionary expenses. The SPM adjustments reflect more than just numbers, since they reveal an extent of people's capabilities. Therefore, it's important that we take into consideration both methods. Before we get into the specifics of the measurement, we must first be clear about the definition of capability. According to Martha Nussbaum, an American philosopher and law professor at the University of Chicago, capabilities are everything that a person is able to do and to be. Within this discussion, Nussbaum considers functionings, which is the active realization of one or more capabilities, or the act of doing and being. She argues that poverty should consider capability the choice rather than just functioning, which is the act itself, because choices lead to freedom. There are two types of capability, internal and combined. Internal capability consists of one's developed personal traits and skills. For example, literacy and self-confidence. Combined capability consists of a person's internal capability combined with their external context, or the political, social, and economic environment by which they are surrounded. Per Nussbaum, a decent society must provide the external context which supports individuals' internal capabilities. Having both internal and combined capabilities allows a person to attain what Nussbaum describes as substantial freedom. This freedom allows people to live a life worthy of human dignity, which Nussbaum associates with the notion of respect. It recognizes the inherent nobility within all humans. Now, innate potential differs among individuals, but human dignity applies to all people.
Nussbaum identifies these 10 central capabilities which a person must have in order to live this dignified life. However, we think the list should be condensed to the following 5 capabilities: bodily health and integrity, the ability to have access to good health and security against violent assault, senses, imagination, and thought, the ability to use the senses to imagine, think, and reason, to have access to basic education, including literacy, being able to express oneself creatively, emotions, the ability to form attachments to other things and people, affiliation, the ability to live in community and engage in social interaction, to be able to imagine the situation of another. This also includes control over one's environment, being able to engage in political interaction and practice free speech. Play and rest, the ability to laugh and play, to enjoy recreational activities and personal time. Now that we understand the basics of capability, how does one begin to measure this rather abstract concept? While it is impossible to precisely quantify capability, we can approach the idea using systems of measurement such as the OPM and the SPM. The current poverty measure the U.S. government uses is the OPM, developed in 1963 by Molly Orshansky, a government research analyst working for the Social Security Administration. The OPM differentiates between families and unrelated individuals when calculating a household unit, a family consisting of a married couple with children. Orshansky used the Department of Agriculture's Economy Food Plan as a basis for her calculations. According to John Iceland, the author of Poverty in America, a handbook, the Economy Food Plan represented the price of foods necessary for a low-income family to meet their temporary nutritional needs. This amount was then multiplied by 3 due to the fact that, according to research at the time, the average American household was spending 1/3 of their income on food in 1963. This calculation is still used today. An advantage of using the OPM is that it consists of straightforward, concrete data, which makes it easy for people to understand. However, it also possesses inherent problems. Spending patterns in modern-day America have changed since the 1960s. Now families spend closer to 1/6 of expenses on food, and living costs have risen significantly. Thus, a model that made sense for the 1960s has become outdated as spending habits have evolved. The threshold adjustments vary by family size, composition, and age of householder. And the threshold is updated based on the Consumer Price Index, a monthly statistical estimate from the Bureau of Labor Statistics that shows the prices of a representative basket of goods and services for all items. The resource measure takes into account the total pre-tax cash income and no other factor. Therefore, the OPM should be a preliminary assessment coupled with the more comprehensive measurement of the SPM. Let's take a closer look at the SPM. The Supplemental Poverty Measure was developed in 1995 by a National Academy of Sciences panel which identified weaknesses of the OPM and suggested alterations. The SPM defines a household as all related individuals who live at the same address, as well as any co-resident unrelated children who are cared for by the family, such as foster children, and any cohabitators and their children. The SPM calculates the 33rd percentile of expenditures on food, clothing, shelter, and utilities of consumer units with 2 kids multiplied by 1.2. The threshold is adjusted based on geography, family size, and composition. It is updated based on 5-year moving averages of expenditures for food, clothing, shelter, and utilities of consumer. The most important aspect of the SPM is that it calculates in-kind benefits. The SPM adds SNAP, National School Lunch Program, housing subsidies, low-income home energy assistance, and supplemental nutrition program for women, infant, and children in the income calculation. The SPM subtracts taxes, or EITC, expenses related to work, child care expenses, medical out-of-pocket expenses, and child care paid. These adjustments are key due to the fact that they give greater insight into people's capabilities.
Opponents of the SPM will argue that the SPM can be costly and difficult to measure. It will be hard to keep track of every family receiving any and/or multiple benefits, and they must report certain expenses themselves as well. This would not only be expensive, but also time-consuming. Also, by the time that all the data has been collected and published, a family situation could be very different, thereby not reflecting the current situation. Another argument would be that the capabilities mentioned previously are nearly impossible to measure. How does one measure someone's ability to laugh or to play? These intangible aspects are hard to quantify. We recognize that the SPM is by no means perfect. It is, however, the start to a more comprehensive measurement approach. Compared to the U.S. government using only the OPM right now, a combination of the SPM and the OPM would offer relatively more accurate, valuable information that reflects people's quality of lives. Plus, through trial and error, researchers will develop faster and more efficient ways of collecting data. Thus, we believe the most accurate and effective way of measuring and defining poverty is using both the OPM to assess thresholds at which people qualify for in-kind benefits, and the SPM, which takes that information to assess the capabilities of individuals and families. Poverty is an extremely multifaceted issue, and there will always be disagreements in terms of policy implementation. But by looking beyond the numbers into people's quality of life, we can begin to develop a better understanding of what it means to be poor.